Okay, good evening, colleagues, and welcome to the 45th edition of the Tourism Online Forum series in February 2025. And tonight we are delighted to have you joining us for our event, which is hosted by the Center for Advanced Tourism Research CATS at the Hokkaido University. And this is your host, Mo. And for this evening session, it's indeed an honor to have Professor Macià to share his recent research about mass and Fiesta tourism in the Balearic Islands, segregation, elitization, and green grabbing. So Professor Macià Blázquez-Salom is a professor of geography at the University of Balearic Islands, Spain, and his research interests including tourism, sustainability, and spatial planning. And he's the coordinator of the Critical Geographic Research Group in the Department of Geography at the University of the Balearic Islands, and he has been visiting scholar in the University of Mexico, Universidad Autónoma de Estado de Mexico, and sorry, I cannot pronounce all the university name, but I will mention the region, Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic, Austria, German and Sweden, Japan, Wakayama University, and the Netherlands, Wageningen University, and the United Kingdom, Liverpool, John Morris University. And as a way to taking activism and research, he collaborates with the social movement, particularly in the Spain and Latin America. I will share the link later below. And please note that this online lecture will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel of the Center for Advanced Tourism Research. So now let's invite Professor Macià to share his lecture. And please leave your comment and question below or in the Q&A box. We also offer this caption generation. So if you want to see the English caption and subtitle, please use this function. Okay, from Noor, the floor is yours. Macià sensei.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chiu Mong Mo. We have met several times in congresses,
Right.
different places in the world. I thank you very much to Hokkaido University inviting me to give this talk. I will spend following 45 minutes, more or less, and afterwards I would love to answer your questions or establish a debate dealing with the topics I'm going to explain. I will share my screen now with the slides to illustrate
Right.
our research.
Perfect.
You can see it perfect.
Yes.
First of all, I have as an introduction, I have 3 slides to introduce the main roles in this process. It's like an informal introduction to, let's say, the casting of the social agents that are related with mass and fiesta tourism. In the case of the Balearic Islands, but I'm sure that you can find parallelism, similar roles in other places. First of all, I'm very proud to show you a picture of my grandparents. They represent the local community. I was grown in a farm with them, and I can imagine that they will feel happy and proud of your invitation to me to give this talk. Secondly, I'm introducing you the stereotype of tourist, working class tourism. This is a film, Spanish film. El turismo es un gran invento. Tourism is is a nice invention. It's because of the tourist development in the 60s in Spain. And Paco Martinez Soria, who was this actor in the film, was explaining the transformation that tourists brought to Spain in the 60s. This film is from 1968. And thirdly and lastly, I'm introducing you what I have named the corporate class, the the rich people who are from Mallorca, such as Rafa Nadal, who is a tennis player. Perhaps you have heard about him. He is investing, his family, in fact, is investing their savings, their capital in Mallorca and in other islands, for instance, in the Caribbean, with joint ventures with hotel chains such as Iberostar, which is a Mallorcan hotel chain, or with hedge funds such as this GPF Capital, who has bought that has bought half of the facilities, sport facilities that Nadal's family built up in his own village, Manacor, in Mallorca. You also have a picture of Michael Douglas, the actor, the American actor, who has also invested in real estate business in Mallorca. This is the village he owns. Um, they are using it as a refuge, particularly after as a refuge, particularly after the COVID for their family. And lastly, you also have a picture on the right-hand side of Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson. Perhaps you have heard about him because he has an space on airlines company who has invested as well in Mallorca in the manor house, which is on the bottom right-hand side of your slide. This is to show you what are the elites interested in fixing their capital in a place such as the Balearic Islands. It's a very attractive place for them to invest. In order to offer you a more academic perspective after this introduction, which is more like a joke to show you the main roles, the casting, I'm going to follow this index, beginning with the social production of mass tourism. You will see that I'm applying this, we are applying this kind of analysis to the Balearic Islands, but we also apply it to other destinations which are very much related with Spain, such as in the Caribbean, Central America, Latin America, even in the southeast of Asia, where hoteliers from the Balearics are investing, and we are analyzing how they are shaping the places in order to promote their business, the tourism industry. Secondly, you will see how our diagnostic is that the Balearics are becoming such a golden cage for elites, rich people, and their investment. And lastly, the politicizing debate or politicizing the debate in terms of the academic activism through the collaboration with social movements. Just have my email address and just see that I'm a member of this University of the Balearic Islands, which is the only public university in our islands. To introduce you our islands, you have the map of our islands on the right hand side, on the bottom of the right hand side of this slide. You see that in comparison with other islands worldwide, other islands that are also mass tourist destinations, such as Cuba, Dominican Republic, Hainan, Canary Islands, Hawaii, Bali. The Balearic Islands are the smallest in terms of land surface, around 5,000 square kilometers, as you can see. According to this quotation from Ivan Murray, these most saturated tourist destinations are the best and most urgent laboratories to analyze the socio-ecological relations, the social uh, organization of leisure, of tourism. This is why we consider this kind of contest. If you compare the list of islands, you can see how we have the highest ratio of tourists in relation to the number of inhabitants. Even if you compare our islands with Chinese tourist destinations such as Hainan, with a huge amount of tourists visiting the island every year, ours is nearly twice bigger in terms of ratio. These are data from 2023. The official data for 2024 are not yet released, but we know that along the first 11 months of last year, we had even more tourists than in 2023. And taking consideration the amount of inhabitants in the Balearic Islands, 1.2 million inhabitants, and compare it with this graph that is showing you the human pressure. Here you have the seasonality, in fact, through the analysis of the amount of people, which is in fact the factual population in the Balearic Islands all along this last 30 years nearly. In the resident people, the inhabitants have increased more than 50% during this period. This is the people who was home for Christmas time, which is the bottom of the line. You see how it has been increasing, but you can see the seasonality in terms of, for instance, Eastern period, holidays, when you have a slight amount of increasing human pressure every year. You have the COVID, but you can see how we are having more and more tourists by the peak, increasing the amount over 2.1 million in the peak of the summertime, which is nearly twice the inhabitants that are living in the islands, to show you the human pressure we are suffering. The drivers of this process in Mass and Fiesta tourist destinations is the fact that this commodity has become consumerist, compensatory leisure. You are saving money during the year to have access to this activity, which is the way in which you are spending your savings. And this is a process of mass consumption, production and consumption, particularly related with this kind of destinations. It's very profitable because it requires little investment. Most of the commodities are free because they are common goods, such as the quality of the seawater or the landscape or sightseeing. They belong to the community, right? They are commons. It uses a large amount of labor requiring almost no qualification because services are fit with um, labor with low qualification. Institutional framework is adaptable to the interest of the investors, such as through spatial planning. It has a very strong link with real estate business, financialization, spatio-temporal fits of capital in those places related to the built environment. I will show you examples. And all these factors, the combination of these factors um, pays off quickly the investment. It makes it very profitable. And this is why we have experienced, for instance, in the case of the Balearic Islands, which is a slide that I am showing you, with a graph that we used to illustrate the paper on the right-hand side, published in English in a Spanish journal, how the amount of tourist beds has been increasing. You see the boost tourism in the 60s, which is very much related to the dictatorship of Francisco Franco since our civil war finished in 1936, 39, sorry, began in 1936. And with this uh, accommodation development in terms of tourist beds, you can see how it's related to the amount of tourists that were coming to the Balearics and how it has been increasing and increasing and increasing. These are hotels, tourist beds. You'll see how nowadays you have to add the short-term rentals, tourist beds as well. And the final result after the real estate bubble, for instance, that finished with the burst of um, um, the burst of the speculation of the real estate bubble in 2008. The result in the space is what Jarkko Saarinen described as the enclave tourism resorts. Single purpose spaces, standardized, and he's adding that they are all exclusive for the local community. They are like ghettos for the tourists. This is an example of a place in Mallorca, a tourist resort, like those I have been mentioning in Magaluf, in the island of Mallorca. This kind of tourist resorts has been developed since as I told you, Franco regime. Uh, After the end of our civil war, and through the intervention of this ruling class, politicians, entrepreneurs, what you can even call godfathers of the mafia, because they are families. For instance, this one, Luis Antonio Bolín Bidwell, he was a member of the government in the dictatorship of the after the coup d'etat paid by a Mallorcan financier, Joan Marc, that promoted what we call touristification, the capital logics of this tourist development. As an example, I can explain you as well that he was responsible, Bolin Bidwell, for creating a series of war routes, even during the war. Through these routes, the dictatorship was showing the places uh, that were conquered by the military coup d'etat, to show you how there is a strong link in between government promotion and tourist development in Spain. This is how Spain became a very important tourist destination that was having more than 84 million tourists in 2023, which is the official data. It's expected that this year the whole country will receive more than 100 million tourists. As an example of another member of the ruling class related with the dictatorship, Manuel Fraga Iribarne, which is the one on the right-hand side at the top. He was Minister for Information and Tourism in the 60s, right during this period of tourist development. This is the period that's known as Desarrollismo, as the 30 Glorious, let's say in general terms worldwide. Boost tourism with what we call grave grabbing in terms of urban sprawl, devaluating the peseta with the visit of Eisenhower. This means that an agreement began in between the United States and Spain. Consider that Spain was giving support to Hitler or to Mussolini during the war in Europe, during the Second World War. This kind of government was very much related with the Catholic Church, the Opus Dei, to develop new, as I told you, tourist resorts that were known as Center for National Interest for Tourism. Here you have a map of 78 new tourist cities that were planned in Spain. This is in the 60s and 70s, right before the end of the dictatorship in 1975. As a spatial planning to boost the tourist industry and the real estate business. Here you have the area for the map, the plan for one of these tourist resorts, Playa Ravenna, located by the northeast of the island of Mallorca. You have a satellite image on your left-hand side, showed you the location of this project. In fact, it's a project that did not success because of the social movements struggling for the right to the space, the right of the local community to what we call the right to the island, the right to control the political process, and the local community, let's say, mobilized to apply to struggle, demand for the protection of this place. Even with the support of artists, the painting on the left-hand side was painted by a local painter, Miquel Barceló, to give support to this campaign to protect. You see how the roads were built up, but the urban development stopped. We have published the analysis of this process, demanding the right to the island in the paper, which is quoted in the slide. To show you more examples of this ruling class, I want to introduce you the corporate class of the hoteliers, which is very important in our analysis. They are organized in a lobby called Esteltur, and they have been shared by hoteliers mostly. You see Escarrer family, for instance, where the owners of this hotel chain called Meliá Hotels International, the 17th biggest hotel chain worldwide, operating, as you see, more than 300 hotels in 40 different countries with many different brands. You also have the family Bartheló that own another hotel chain with the same name. And other examples also from Spain in this list. To show you how important they are, I'm showing you another picture that is publicizing in press the agreement in between Escarrer family with Rafael Nadal. I think, I hope you will know him. And this is the tennis player, which is also one of the entrepreneurs boosting urban development and the hotel industry, tourist industry in Mallorca. They have this new brand called Zell. We have been analyzing with other members of our research group, publishing this book, for instance, Turistificación Global, or papers I have already mentioned, to study the role of multinational companies in the tourist industry, which is, of course, very much related to the mass tourism destinations, mass and Fiesta tourist destinations, not only in seaside coastal areas, also in urban areas such as Barcelona, where I am right now, collaborating with an university here, and to analyze the role, the way in which these multinational companies are working. We established this list of characteristics. As you can see, large size, integration processes, the high capacity for the creation of jobs, their commercial strength in terms of branding, for instance, repatriating profits, what is known as, you will see now, as leakage, and also benefiting from the legal immunity afforded by tax havens. From, as you can see, more than 40 years ago, Stephen Britton analyzing the case of Fiji. He was designing this drawing to show the system which established the relation between the core and the periphery, the multinational, transnational corporations controlling the business and subtracting, and as he said, part of the economic surplus of these dependent social formations as net accumulation, as you can see in the graph, from what Louis Turner and John Ash defined as pleasure peripheries, through what Immanuel Wallerstein named the war system, war capitalist system, to establish the control of the dominant tourist sectors in the tourist destinations. And this is the case of the Balearic Islands, as you guys have seen. But as I mentioned before, this is also the case of Central America, the Caribbean, other places in Latin America as well, impoverished countries that suffered a debt crisis in the 80s. And that was a moment that corporate class, corporations, and tourist corporations were using to establish to fix their capital in places such as Dominican Republic. You can see the island and the high amount of hotels that have been built up there by Spanish transnational corporations, such as the ones that are represented by Macià, Barceló, Riu, Escarrer, Sant Pol, Matutes, the surnames of the males that are on the front page of that book on the left-hand side, the visionaires of the Caribbean, all of them Mallorcan or from Ibiza as well, from the Balearic Islands, that have not only promoted tourist development in the Balearics, but also in Latin America. If we have a look to the ranking with the list of the biggest hotel chains worldwide, you can see how we have these 4 hotel chains from the Balearic Islands among the 50 biggest hotel chains worldwide. Meliá, Barceló, Riu, Iberostar are examples of these corporations that began their business in the Balearics and that now are exporting know-how to feed their capital and promote this tourist industry in other places. Here you have the graph. This is illustrating the chapter that I have shown you before in the book entitled Turistificación Global, Global Touristification, where you can see how Mexico, Dominican Republic, Cuba are the islands, well, the areas, because Mexico is part of the mainland, but the areas where they have developed this tourist industry in the same vein as they have done it in the Balearics. You can even go closer to everyday life and to have a look to this picture that shows you fake election posters for the regional elections in 2015. They were, of course, fake because the counter-hegemonic movements, social movements, were willing to show who is the ruling class, even much more powerful than the political parties. Fluixà, Escarrer, Riu are the surnames of the families that are behind the corporate class, behind the hotel chains. And this social movement was willing to show that they are the hidden, let's say, ruling class. They did not, of course, present their candidatures to the elections, but this is why they made this kind of fake posters to show how powerful they were and what was the amount of their capital in number terms. You see 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 million euros. We are talking about 10 years ago to show you the struggles in our islands. This is changing because there is a process of hotel finance association, banking becoming more speculative. Hedge funds such as Blackstone is the biggest hotel owner in Spain nowadays. They have the highest amount of hotel beds in Spain. This is the coupling real estate property from their exploitation of hotels through rental, franchise, management. We have had regulatory changes in our legislation to allow this kind of decoupling, such as the the creation of a new figure of real estate investment trust, similar to the one in the States. And we have also had changes in our legislation in terms of territorial and labor regulation in order to promote these kind of processes, intensifying touristification. To show you the process of touristification, I will follow with few slides, maps, graphs, air photography to illustrate the evolution of this process. Since, as I told you, our civil war in the 30s, here you have the four islands of the Balearics, Mallorca, Menorca, Ibiza, Formentera, how the amount of tourist beds have been evolving, analyzing it in terms of geographical pattern, according to their distance to the airports, chart the access. Here you have the 70s, you have the quotation of the paper where Tony, Nofra, and Ivan published this paper, how it has been evolving. And also, you have it in a graph that was published by Ismail Irigoyen as part of his PhD thesis to show you the evolution of the tourist beds in two places, two tourist resorts, Magaluf and Playa de Palma, just to show you how fast they were growing. The average amount of hotels that was built up monthly was 1.7 all along the decade of the 60s, 1960s. And the result is such a place like this one, Magaluf, one of these beaches. In the case of Mallorca, you have an aerial photography and the names of the hotels owned by Meliá Hotels International. This is where they were born as a corporation. Now this place is being restructured, upgraded through private investment. The average of the private investment in the whole island of Mallorca, which is the map that I am showing you, is around 100 million euros per year. It's being invested in urban enclaves, such as the case of Palma, the capital city, but also mostly in sun and sea enclaves, such as the beach of Palma or Magaluf that I have shown you before. And the result is the upgrading of the tourist offer, the tourist supply, seeking for highest revenue, bigger profits. To show you these profits, we have prepared this graph with the revenue per available room, showing you the average for Spain in the red color, and also the average for Mallorca in the black color. And you see the data, the figures of the difference in between both at the peak, summer season, that was 8% by the crisis, the systemic crisis of 2008, increasing to 42% last year. This is show you how profitable is real estate investment in built environment, in hotel assets. In productive terms, this is the primary circuit of capital accumulation. Also in the real estate business, because these hotels, as I told you before, are being sold to financial enterprises, hedge funds, for instance, as the case of the sport facility from Rafa Nadal family. They also have sold, as I told you, half of it to a hedge fund. And this is particularly intense in the mature tourist enclaves, which are the mass tourism and fiesta cities. You see, Playa de Palma, Magaluf, they were declared as mature through a legal designation. Other places as well, as you see in the case of Mallorca, we have other in the case of Menorca. In the wake of the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 COVID pandemic, there was a deregulation to promote boosting investment, boosting growth, upgrading, particularly in order to, as you have seen before, increasing the revenue, increasing the profits for the owners of the hotels, for the corporations. I will say not that much for the workers or for the local community. It's a private profit accumulation. In these areas, we are also analyzing how the regulation is promoting social spatial segregation. Here you have 4 air photographies that are published in the laws that are mentioned, that are cited in the slide, the CRIS law, which is establishing new rules against low-income tourism. For instance, in terms of bargain drinking. These are the places that are popular for working class in Europe. They have been coming to the Balearics since the boom in the 60s. But now these places are profitable enough to attract new investment, to upgrade the tourist supply, and what is needed for them to increase their profits is to displace this low-income tourism through banning their activities. I will say that are not banned in the high standard hotels, but they are banned on the street of these popular destinations. I have been invited as Dr. Menkiu was explaining to Liverpool, and while there was there at university, I established a link in between this displacement and the displacement of the working class in the football matches. Owen Jones, in this book, Chaff, Demonization of the Working Class, is explaining the case of a disaster in a football match in England and how it was used to justify the increase in ticket prices, excluding the working class from the football matches. I established this link because I think that perhaps we can make a research question, right? That has to do with the territorial attachment of tourists. We have a struggle going on nowadays in Mallorca, in places like Magaluf, because of the exclusion and displacement of British working class people that are not welcome anymore in the hotels that have been upgraded. Therefore, we can make the question of whose right to the enclave tourist resorts. It's not only this case of the British, there is also a case of the German that have been considering the island of Mallorca, which has a nickname in German, which is Male, as an insular land of Germany. With Hazel Andrews, who invited me to Liverpool, we are analyzing this process. And this is why I am using the term golden cage to explain the transformation towards the Lutz tourism in terms of what Michael Hall explains as Brundtland as usual. This means growth, elitization, exclusion, making it more expensive, towards what we think can be, as an hypothesis, the end of cheap tourism due to crises related with energy, peak oil, for instance, or global change, climate change, for instance, right? I published a paper for the Geographical Sciences journal in Japan, Chirikagaku, if I pronounce it well. You have
Yes.
it online. Yes. Thank you. With this title, you can follow the arguments that I wrote there uh, in this paper. I will make a recognition. I would like to make a recognition to Jose Manuel Laredo, who is one of our ecological ecologists in Spain, to show you as well the state of the art, right? The literature review, also in Spanish, not only in English, of course, where he's analyzing development as a positional advantage. We are the islands on the left-hand side, in the center of the world economy. If we apply this model to the case of Mallorca, you know that we are part of the European Union. We belong to the Schengen area with the euro, protected by the NATO. Uh, and the fact that we are islands is also bringing like an imaginary of isolation, protection for those willing to invest, for those willing to find a refuge, for them not to suffer climate crisis, sanitary crisis, etc. This is, let's say, the theoretical framework, and this can be a case to show you a chalet, which is located in the south coast of Mallorca, which is the slide on the left-hand side, right in front of a national park, which is the archipelago, which is in the right-hand side, with a swimming pool, with a bathroom, bedroom, gym, uh, with wood views to the sea, to the Zeon. And this is what we call uh, green grabbing, uh, the process to becoming more luxury, the end of cheap tourism towards an euphemistical term, quality tourism, which means fewer tourists who spend more money. Elite travel, protection of natural areas, but to be appropriated by capital, such as the views to the national park, green areas, rural areas. For neoliberal ecotourism, what Brown Busher and Rob Fletcher denominated as accumulation by conservation. We have published the paper that is on the right-hand side with Asun and Rob, establishing a difference in between fake and fair touristic growth. And I will show you our reflection in the following slides. Because the process that we are living in the Balearics is the fencing of the rural estates. Here you have a map with these red spots showing you barriers, gentrificating and closuring the rural land in Mallorca. The map is showing you the walking routes, hiking routes that I was analyzing for my PhD this time ago. We also have this process in on the beach. Popular beaches are being closed for only for the enjoyment of the elites. And we have struggles, as you can see, in the letters, in the sentence that is in the picture. Your literary trip is my daily misery, because there is a struggle in between the local community because of this uh, pressure for financial purposes. We have also urban sprawl in the countryside with the construction of swimming pools for private enjoyment, of course. The blue spots on the map of Mallorca that was also published by Angela Hoff and me time ago is showing you the amount of swimming pools, particularly related with short-term rentals of uh, isolated villas in the countryside. We also have the transformation of manure houses in the countryside, what is known as posesiones in Mallorca, such as this one, or the one that I have shown you, owned by Richard Branson in Mallorca as well. They have both the ones that are in this mentioned in this newspaper explanation were bought by hedge funds or transforming them into hotels. And we also have this process in the city. This is a picture of the city of Palma, the capital city of Mallorca. And this article is explaining that it's becoming increasingly popular for commuters coming from the UK, expats, digital nomads, willing to not only visit the city, but also investing in the city, in the real estate business, in the built environment. This is the heart of the city, the old district, the historical district of the city of Palma, where the amount of hotels have increased 5 times during the period that is explained in the slide. This is what we published as well in the paper, which is quoted. We also have a process of transformation of the retail network, the retail landscape. We have published it in this book, and just to show an example, this is an example of an ancient shop in the area of the old Jewish district in the historical center of Palma, with the activities that were traditionally developed by the Jewish community in the Mediterranean. Nowadays, it's an ice cream shop from franchise. You see the names Istanbul, Dubai, Hanover, Barcelona, and also Mallorca. Tourists are visiting the city, and they are stopping, attracted by this tourist supply that is changing the landscape in the city. There is also an occupation and commodification of the public space. The public squares are becoming terraces. Maria Jimenez Bravo, she published this communication with a map showing you the amount of terraces that were occupied by bars and restaurants. They even occupy public benches on the street, such as this one in the center of the city of Palma. They are not public anymore because in this case the bar was using it. Of course, there was a struggle demanding to stop this process. Even worse is the fact that the amount of housing that is devoted to tourist accommodation, short-term rental, is increasing. This is the graph with the tourist accommodation, the one I have shown you before, compared with the tourist flows, but now it's adding from 2017 the amount of tourist beds in houses through short-term rental schemes. This is boosted, this is promoted through advertisements, such as this you can see in the slide. Do you have a home to sell. We know a lot of frozen Scandinavians that are willing to buy a house. This is an advertisement that I found in the airport of Palma, addressed to the Mallorcan people willing to sell their ownership. Is the same they say on the right-hand side in Spanish. And this is promoting a process of socio-spatial segregation in the city of Palma. This is a map of the city of Palma, where you have the blue areas, which are the more expensive, and the red ones, which are the cheapest, where the lowest income local population is being pushed away. And this is where there is also a process of eviction, because even in these places, they cannot afford paying the mortgage, because they come from peripheral areas with the lowest rent in relation with the receiving space, which is Mallorca, for instance, in the center of this slide, due to the pressure of the investors that are coming from the emitter space, which is where the tourists come from, right? Here you have two different mobilities: tourist mobility from the left-hand side and labor mobility from the right-hand side. But the problem in the destination is that housing is too expensive. Everyday life is too expensive, but particularly housing. Therefore, we have the paradox of having working poor, people that have a job, which is what is being explained in this graph and this newspaper article, but who cannot pay a rent, not even a mortgage, even less. The graph are showing you the prices of renting a house or buying a house, purchasing a house, um, comparing the average in Spain in the red color and the average in Ibiza. This is the third biggest island in the Balearic Islands, right? And this is the diagnostic. Just to finish with it, we have a metabolic problem, which is related with planetary boundaries. We are expanding the gateways to bring more tourists, such as through the enlargement of the airport on the right-hand side, or the harbor, the highways, the marinas, the infrastructure in terms of power plants, desalination plants, waste treatment plants, and this is making our ecological footprint increasing and increasing, right? Ivan Murray established the amount of land which is needed to supply resources to the Balearics, and it's 6 times bigger than the total surface of the Balearics, supplying resources and also sinking waste, right? Which is the idea of the ecological footprint. And to end, politicizing, sorry, the problem. Um, it's a joke. It's links with the Japanese culture. Giri in Spanish means tourist. It's a slang. And the fact that this drawing is showing you the haragiri means that you are killing yourself because of too much touristification, too much tourist commodification, tourist logics, right? And the logos on the right-hand side are showing you counter-hegemonic uh, movements, social movements in terms of class, ethnicity, gender, that are struggling to fight, in fact, with demonstrations, two demonstrations last summer on the streets of Palma and Ibiza and Menorca, because as the drawings are saying, tourism is killing the city. They even say that tourism is equal to disaster, to even to terrorism, let's say it, just to understand what is the people feeling about the process, right? And demonstrations which are more, um, let's say, informal and closer to a fiesta, struggling for the right to the space, to nature, to the island, in this case, for the right to the beach, just this one, which was organized in front of the tourist resort of Beach of Palma last summer in the Ballermann, which is the name that the German gave a gift to this place, showing you how local population is promoting the politicization of this debate. We are contributing to this process through activities such as the one that are in this on the slide, collaborating with Casaplanas in Palma, which is an art community, or with Alba Sud through the webinar, which is on the top right-hand side, this next weeks, or with the summer school in Barcelona in June this year, to develop the theory of the right to the island, the right to influence and rule the processes by which nature, society, and relationship are reshaped by urbanization and capitalism. This is our definition of the right to the island. We have published it in one of the papers I have mentioned to you. The process of deepening democracy, taking into account the island local culture and accumulated skills and knowledge to resignificate quality tourism in terms of eco-social transformation, welfare for the local community, improvement of the working conditions, provision of universal basic income, collective self-organization, social tourism, resignificating tourism, as I said, as the social organization of leisure in time and space, through decommodification, social and solidarity tourism, because it's not a question of being against tourism, it's a question of boosting new forms that will be more sustainable, more fair in terms of social justice and environmental justice. And this is why we have been analyzing the topic of degrowth as a political triad. This is how I will end explaining you this idea of tourist degrowth. As you can see, in the context of mass Fiesta tourist destinations, right? With all the problems that I have shown you. What is the aim of this idea, of this political process? More public debate, more public democratic debate, deepening this process, demanding equity, commoning and redistributing value, and finally, planning by a physical contraction and convergence in terms of per capita throughput. What does it mean? Analyzing the social metabolism, energy, materials consumption per capita, and, for instance, in terms of ecological footprint, and making it contract, first of all, but also converge, which means that perhaps we have to focus not only in the poorest, but also in the richest, which are wasting, right? And punishing those who waste. We have published, again, it was 2 years ago, 2023, in Tourist Geography Journal, this paper entitled Tourism Degrowth, with the proposal, the analysis, the diagnostic, and also the proposal of tourism degrowth. And also in the Spanish Geography Association Bulletin, you have the quotation on the bottom of this slide, why we are advocating for fair degrowth, tourist degrowth, through decommodification, disparity reduction, dignifying working conditions, spatial planning, deconsumerism, or detouristification, right? And comparing it with what is opposite is growth. And dealing with overtourism, as they call it, through planning and management, which is, in our opinion, not enough. We have to transform the system, not just looking for mitigation measures. And that's it. I've been talking a bit more than 45 minutes. I'm sorry, but I am available if you want to make questions or for the debate. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Macià. Glasses. So the time is perfect. I think you basically introduced everything we need to know about island tourism, as well as the geographic tourism in Spain. So we are open our floor for Q&A, and normally before that, I will go first because you know Japan is currently after the COVID-19 is also under the recovery of the tourism process. I think last time we had a symposium together was during the COVID-19, right? So what happened in Japan now, they are really over tourism, especially in the major city, Tokyo, Osaka, even Kamakura, this area, urban area, tons of tourists. But the problem is in the rural area, there's not enough tourists. So Japan is really struggling how to control the tourism flow. Like you mentioned in your lecture, the quality tourism, also high-end visitors, they try to work more on that direction. So under this kind of background, how we can borrow some case study you mentioned to Japan, especially for island, is also quite challenging. So my first question is from a long-term social economic sustainability perspective, how these consequences of reducing mass tourism in favor of high-end visitor works in your case study, and how does this affect local employment and business uh, traditionally rely on high tourist volume? So that's my first question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what we
Mm,
see in the place we are analyzing is inequality and the process of deepening this problem, right? You can uh, focus this analysis in the scale of a tourist destination, such as the case of a Macià Fiesta tourist place, or you can widen and analyze it in other scale, right? And talk about an even geographical development, which is what is happening even in Spain. We have empty Spain, inland
mm,
Spain, which is like Lapland in Scandinavia, with low human density, for instance, inhabitants in terms of inhabitants.
mm,
Um, the main aim, in my opinion, is to empower local communities
mm,
and to give them access to the surplus, to the
mm,
benefits from the tourist industry. The biggest problem, and this is why we talk about touristification,
mm,
is not the amount of people, is the fact that the profits are not going to the local community, are not staying there. This is why we like the definition of Stephen Britton about what is leakage, right? When the
mm,
profits are taken. Um, this is why we talk about tourism growth, but perhaps you can use it
mm,
in other terms to talk about working conditions, wages, salaries, access to services, basic goods such as housing,
mm,
such as health, um, teaching,
mhm,
I mean, studying, learning, social support to disabilities or to elderly people or to young people. And in these terms, it's not that much important the amount, in my opinion,
right.
but who is controlling, right? Who is
Mm,
controlling the tourist industry? This is why we also use it. this kind of analysis for inland Spain with Asun Blanco, which is
Mm,
particularly specialized in this topic, and how tourism can be promoted in these areas, rural areas, but keeping the control, empowering the local community.
mm. Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important, and it's quite a global phenomenon, not only in one region. I think everywhere is facing this issue, and also this inequality among each regions, right? Some region, I think, in Barcelona, it's a kind of like crazy situation. They even count tourists as a temporary resident, right? Because there's no way to separate tourists and locals. On the other hand, some places never have enough tourists, and they are also struggling how to allow tourists to pay more. In compare with some people don't really want to contribute a lot on economy perspective, but they just want to fill up the place with numbers. Okay, my second question will be the what alternative solution or models of sustainable tourism could be balance this economic benefits with the social inclusion rather than reinforcing exclusion, especially
Mm,
for island destinations.
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, I have begun working with Hazel Andrews
Mm,
because her PhD thesis in the 90s was devoted to analyze Magaluf and Palmanova, which are mass tourist destination for British working class people.
mm,
And they are now being excluded. It's not just a question of excluding local community, as Jarko Saarinen established in his paper about enclavic tourist resorts, but also the process of, let's say, somehow a displacement, a kind
mm,
of gentrification in between the tourists,
mm,
uh, low income being replaced by high income. Therefore, it's quite complex. The analysis of the social spatial segregation, the exclusion, the displacement, the disposition, even because
mm,
they felt very close to those places. Hazel was explaining to me that she was interviewing someone from England who was visiting Magaluf, and she
mm,
was bringing the ashes of her sister, died sister. They incinerated her, and she was bringing the ashes to
mm,
throw them to the sea, into the sea in Magaluf, because this person was so attached, so much attached to the place that her last will was remaining forever on the sea in Magaluf. Therefore, it's not only the local community, it's also those who have been coming, polar tourism, working class, that are now being displaced. And we have this process as well, as you said, in Barcelona, for instance, or in Malaga, in Spain, other places. And I'm sure that we can also study this in places such as Hawaii or perhaps Bahamas or other places in Japan that are becoming more and more popular, not only the cities, but also perhaps tourist destinations where we have this kind of social struggle. And this is what is appealing for me and interesting. Perhaps if you ever want to collaborate, we can analyze it together, comparing places in Japan and places in Spain or the Caribbean.
mm. Right. Okay, thank you. We have a question from the audience from Professor Yoshizawa. And question one is the number of visitors to the islands has been increasing in the long term. So, but what is considered appropriate capacity? Are there economic, social, or environmental criteria to determine this? I think is a good question.
Mm, yeah. What is the criteria to establish the capacity?
Mm,
Um, Instead of focusing on the numbers of tourists,
mm,
I think that we have to think about it also in terms of their per capita throughput in order not to give advantage to those who are richer. Because if you just talk about amount of people, this means that perhaps you will establish a threshold and you will say, okay, no more than established amount, and only those who will be richer who will be able to afford it, to pay for it, will have access to the product. And this is unfair, in my opinion. This is something that is making me thinking about social justice. Therefore, perhaps the threshold, the cap has to be established in terms of um, the ecological footprint. Let's say somehow promoting less environmental impact of the tourist, and also taking in consideration the output for their own. This is why we have a program in Spain devoted to elderly people, which is called Inserso, social tourist scheme. And I think that not only the elderly people, but also the younger people needs to spend their leisure traveling because it's the period in their life when they can learn more. Perhaps, therefore, having younger people through a public scheme such as a social tourism scheme in Cerso for the elderly people can be another option in terms of welfare for the visitors and how tourists can contribute to their um, wealth.
Okay, thank you, your style answer. The second question would be the illustration of Halakiri was impressive. Is the Spanish government trying to legally control the tourism situation?
Hmm. I was a bit afraid of not being polite with this picture, but it's just to show you the answer from social movements. I'm happy to know that it was nice for you. Um, the public administration is very much aware, and we are having a public debate that is being supported, is being boosted, I will say, by critical academics, social movements, political parties of every single party. They are all of them talk about migration, talk about human pressure, resources, climate change, because of the increasing ecological footprint and social problems with housing particularly. And we are applying mm, many lots of spatial planning measures. You can find them in the papers. If I have access to them, I can send it to you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We have one audience, Anika Kuka, raise her hand, or maybe we can invite her to ask a question directly.
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yes.
Hello,
Yeah.
Anitza.
Hello, Macià. It's nice to see you again, and it was a fantastic talk. Thank you so much for this because we have so much in common. In my country, I'm from Croatia. We have also, I would say, also problems with tourism, and I like the idea of degrowth. And I have one question: do you think that striking a balance between a love and hate attitudes among the local population would be one of the big challenges in this tourism degrowth? Because in areas where you have mass tourism, usually people are, or they're loving tourism, they want more and more tourists, and the other ones are now they just hate it, they just want to stop it. So because I saw those signs, tourists go home, we have similar or the same practically even in Croatia. So do you think this will be one of the challenges, talking to the local community and striking this balance between their attitudes, because they either love it or hate it, and or want more or don't want any of that? Do you have these
Mhm. Thank you.
problems? Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Anitza. Anitza is the chair of the Island Commission of the International Geographical Union. Thank you very much for your question. Um, I gave a talk to one of the social movements in Palma, and the answer to your question was that we were planning, talking about organizing an activity in one of those tourist resorts, asking to the working class tourists to give support to the social movements in Mallorca that are demanding their right to the space, their right to the beach, their right to nature. I think that perhaps this idea of establishing new alliances in terms of social class can be an answer to your question, because the question is not, in my opinion, if you go in depth into the problem, the amount of people. The question is the disposition, the the displacement, which is driven by investment, by capital, by making it more expensive. You know, if I talk to you about my personal experience, I haven't had a problem ever with tourists going to a mass tourist destination because they stay in the tourist destination. They enjoy the beach there. The problem is when they decide, some of them, those who are richer among them, decide to invest in the residential areas, buying houses, coming to the bars where locals are going, not just staying in the tourist resort. This is what is happening now here in the Balearics. And this is how uh, it, it, more and more spaces and things of our everyday life are being commodified for tourist purposes, which means touristification, because it's going for profit. It's driven by supply side. It's attracting capital investment. Therefore, in my opinion, to finish, um, establishing this kind of alliances among tourists and residents is possible if we agree on what are the red lines, right? And in my opinion, it has to do with commodifying housing, for instance, the speculation of land grabbing, for instance, even behind green grabbing, or the waste with private jets, um, the accumulation, capital accumulation, in fact, on the base of the touristification of the islands.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for the
Thank you,
question.
Macià.
Okay, we are almost finishing our time, and thank you everybody again. I think we can close today's session if there's no more quick questions. And okay, let me close tonight's session and thanks all of our audience and Professor Macià. I will prepare this video and upload it tomorrow. And wish everybody have a great evening and also great day if you are in a different time zone. And see you next time for our online forum. Thank you very much.